Hi, this is Frank Giavella with Awards Daily. Almost 2 years ago, I sat down with George MacKay on the eve of the US premiere of Sam Mendes' monumental work 1917, a film that went on to much deserved acclaim. I'm happy to be back chatting with George about his latest film, The Strange and Stirring Wolf, where he plays Jacob, a young man who believes he's an actual wolf trapped in a human body. Hi, George. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Frank. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So, since we last spoke, there was this massive success of 1917 and then the pandemic. How have you been coping?
Yeah, no, I'm very well, thank you. I think all things considered, I was very lucky over the pandemic. But yeah, it was last time we spoke, it was just before 1917, which of course was it was amazing, the reception that the film got, and just wonderful for the team and all everyone involved. So yeah, it's been good. It's been a kind of crazy 2 years, huh?
Yeah, it certainly has. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about 1917 later. For now, in Wolf, you played Jacob, who truly identifies as a wolf, but's been living in the human world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about species identity disorder, which I looked up and it's real. It's also known as species dysphoria.
Yeah. No, and to be honest, I didn't know anything about it beforehand. But to be honest, I think it wasn't the specifics of the condition were not necessarily what kind of drew me to the role. And I think it's, as much as it is a very real condition, it's more this kind of feeling of not fitting, and which I think is kind of more universally identifiable. um and it's sort of, in a sense, I think by being true to a very specific version of that feeling or very specific circumstance, hopefully then it can kind of like it can ripple out to be sort of connected to on a wider level. But yeah, it was I think the kind of that initial, the sort of simple and strong premise of this, a man who feels that he is a wolf trapped in a man's body. I mean, it's such a strong kind of place to start, and all the possibilities as to like what that means for himself, for his way of life. That's kind of, that conundrum is what really drew me to the project.
It's really interesting because the story really is about fighting conformity, and that feels like a really important theme right now.
Yeah, I think there's so many kind of, it feels very relevant in terms of so many defining things about our identity and people's identity being questioned and challenged, and people kind of be like kind of being feeling kind of comfortable to be true to themselves, hopefully, and I think, yeah, definitely, this it's a story about one's struggle to kind of retain their identity and to live their identity in the way that's truest to them. And that, of course, has sort of, yeah, many other iterations, that are going on always.
Yeah, well, I'm jumping ahead a little bit since we're speaking about identity. Did playing this part elicit any self-exploration for you where the outcome may have surprised you a bit?
Yeah, I think, well, the one thing in terms of when we first were kind of looked at, I had the week's rehearsal before, actually, but then there was going to be a short break anyhow, but then the lockdown happened in between, so it kind of got extended. But this initial rehearsal, when myself and Nathalie Biancheri, the director, and Terry Notary, our movement coach, kind of were workshopping the wolf and trying to work out what that movement would be, how it would manifest itself, how far we wanted to go with it. And before we kind of hit upon the specifics of the animal, like the wolf, we were kind of looking at what it is to be wild, and what is human, what is wild, what is instinct, what is thought. And through working with Terry, it came up, we kind of found that a defining thing of being human is to be sort of controlled by your thoughts often, and to exist in your head more than in your body. And our sort of, and again, it's an assumed offering, but that animals live a bit more in their instincts in a sort of more primal way, for better or for worse. And that, the kind of, with the exercises that Terry did with myself and all the team to kind of get us out of our head, it was really profound, kind of personally, how much how I realized how much I live inside of my mind, where you're always checking yourself or kind of doing everything on a sort of intellectual level, and it sounds kind of pretentious, but not feeling stuff always. Like certain things, like he would do this exercise to just get you to stand straight and stand in a neutral position, and that sounds simple, and so I stood what I thought was a neutral position. He'd be like, no, you're holding onto your chest there, and that's it. You're locking your knees there, and just drop that and drop it. And he did all these micro adjustments, and I immediately got the giggles and like hysterical laughter. And I had other members of the cast broke down in tears when he do this same thing. And it's this thing of like where you kind of holding on to certain tensions in your body that you don't realize, like, because we're always trying to put our best self across, and that means that I understand that that means I look you in the eye when we talk, or simple kind of socialized gestures, which are valid and valuable because we are human and that's how we interact. But there is a sort of, they can be used to sort of protect against that perhaps more primal reaction to a situation. And that was one of the biggest surprises in myself as to like how socialized I realized I was.
Very, very interesting. And there's a lot. Let's speak a little bit about the physicality of the role, because I felt that one of the things that set this apart from other films that dealt with similar themes was about that. Speak a little bit about the preparation for that physicality and the process of creating this character, the movement and all of that.
Yeah, well, I feel like that was one of the things that you know, as an actor, was most exciting about the prospect of this, is that it was always sort of said in the script that when Jacob was in his wolf state, that he was in his own body, so to speak, that he never sprouted hair or kind of grew longer ears or anything like that. And so kind of going, wow, how can you portray that and express that as a human? And it made me think of like, my mum used to work in costume before I was born, and she worked a lot with dance, like kind of ballet and different dance companies, and so I got to see quite a lot of dance when I was growing up. And I remember, you know, I find it extraordinary what the human body can do. Like, and it's very simple, but you know, when you watch dancers or contortionists, and you think, oh yeah, that's all kind of with training and with time and with dedication, you know, people can achieve that with it, like you or I could achieve that, hopefully. You know, maybe not now, since we
Well, maybe you, not me.
no, but yeah, that's nothing, take nothing away from these incredible dances, but just that but in terms of the physicality of the role, I always knew that sort of becoming an animal and moving like an animal would be part of it, and I found that fascinating. So it sort of it began with these exercises to kind of exploring what it was to be wild and the sort of more mental, emotional state of it. And then we kind of very simply just got down to crawling and finding in the doing the things that we needed to work on, like simple stuff like when I first started doing it, I couldn't keep my bum down, so your back's never flat. And that immediately changes. It looks like a human crawling on all floors. There's suddenly the silhouette becomes much more animal if your back is flat and your knees are beneath you, where I was just kind of getting on all fours as a human, but it became about making your human body look as lupine as possible. So, I mean, there was a lot of crawling in a local park over lockdown as well, and in my family's garden. You know, just a lot of hours spent figuring things out, you know, like going from started crawling like open hands, then finding the kind of the pause and things like that. It was a kind of case of trial and error. And then obviously the pandemic was this massive, very, very serious happening. But the one thing it did all kind of afford us with the change of the schedule that came, is that suddenly what was going to be a 2-week gap in between rehearsal and this next portion of rehearsal turned into 2.5 months. And that just, it was kind of, but we'd done the legwork in that first week to kind of have a bunch of homework to take away. And I think actually that time really, you know, lent itself to the characterization, because I just wouldn't have been able to crawl in the same way without having more time to practice.
That's a pretty remarkable achievement. It really is. And I appreciated the tone. The tone of the film is fascinating, because I like that you played it very, very seriously, and yet there are elements of satire in the film as well.
Yeah, I think that's very kind of you. I think it's just sort of a mixture of kind of like just respecting the character and taking the character seriously, and therefore anything that he takes seriously, you take seriously. But then also tonally, like Nathalie as a director, I think Nathalie's taste as a filmmaker, it's by no means derivative, but I know that she loves the work of Yorgos Lanthimos and you know, and a number of kind of those amazing European directors. And I remember asking her about, you know, cinema, what kind of stuff can I watch, just again, not to be derivative, but just for inspiration when you kind of run out of homework, what can I watch? And she put me onto a couple of films. There was an amazing film called Lawrence Anyways by Xavier Dolan,
Yeah.
um, which kind of again spoke of someone, you know, really fighting with, going like, fundamentally, I don't feel like I'm in the right form, you know, but this is who I am, and who I am is that struggle at the minute. But then how do I get the other side of that struggle? And that film was very inspiring in terms of the way to treat a subject matter that was equivalent. And also another film, and I'm forgetting the director's name, but called Border, a Swedish film, you know, where
Yes, yes, which I've seen. It's extraordinary.
it's extraordinary. But then again,
Yeah.
that's the thing, that what was inspiring about that is like how positively extraordinary it was to watch people embrace a very strange circumstance and kind of give themselves to it fully.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so yeah, so the tone was just kind of about, I guess, respecting the material as best we could.
Yeah. Well, let's chat a little about 1917, and I'm going to rip the Band-Aid right off because the film did so well at the BAFTAs, but on Oscar night, it took a backseat to Parasite, which is a great film, but I felt 1917 was sidelined for political reasons. That's just my opinion. What were your thoughts?
Oh, and that, like, I think we honestly, without sounding sort of overly diplomatic, like, I think we were just happy to be there. I think you just to be in the mix with those award ceremonies is amazing. And I thought Parasite was an extraordinary film. So I think, you know, I think it was well deserving of the awards that it got.
That's really nice of you. Now, the running catharsis shot has become a symbol of great filmmaking. How does that make you feel?
Oh, like, just I've like truly like so honored to be involved. I think because it's sort of, yeah, it was such a, you know, it was such a team effort, and to be part of something that was kind of received as it was is, I don't know, it's, you don't want to spend too much time thinking about it, but it is a very special feeling. And just again, because it's that sort of shot was the culmination, is at some points in part the culmination of the story. Obviously there's a little further to go, but the way in which the filmmaking process and the technical creative process, that was so part of the lifeblood of the film, and kind of using all of that technical genius to create something emotional and sort of epic. That shot, I think, is the kind of pinnacle of that, and the memory of those days to achieve it was like, gives me goosebumps now, just kind of watching the bits that, also the bits that you wouldn't see watching it, like the way that the camera transitioned between two cranes, and then there were two grips in costume because they couldn't get out of the shot, and the moment that they hooked the camera on, seeing one of them get like Pete pumping his fist because he'd done, like, it's like handing the baton the perfect changeover, and like the adrenaline that came with kind of being like, okay, this means it's working, all right, let's go, like, you know, it was very special.
Wow. I wanted to ask you about the musical The End, which
Yeah,
can you speak a little bit about it? It sounds really exciting.
I mean, to be honest, I can't too much, just because we are so at the early stages, and I mean, I'm so happy to be involved. Like, I've spoken to Josh, and I'm a massive fan of his documentaries, and the prospect of collaborating with everyone involved, I'm absolutely thrilled about. But I think, you know, until we're into that process, I wouldn't be able to know how to talk about it more.
To elaborate too much. After 1917, did you find yourself with a ton of Hollywood offers, and how do you go about selecting your roles? Because you've been very discerning, which is fascinating.
I think no, like, no, there wasn't like sort of any, I don't know. Yeah, of course there were. I was very lucky to kind of receive, you know, you're in the mix for more things, and um yeah, there was a couple more projects coming in, and but I think it was the same. I think, you know, to kind of to honor that, the opportunity of choice, you just got to follow your gut, and Wolf was the next project, and it felt the creatively, the possibility of it, and watching Nathalie's first film Nocturnal, I thought was really fantastic. And uh yeah, and everything that it dealt with, I was kind of most inspired by the possibility of everything that was within Wolf, and so it felt completely, you know, a given that that was the next project to go for.
George, what I love about your career trajectory to date is that you are so eclectic. I have seen you do so many different things. So I really look forward to what you're going to do next. It's been fascinating to watch so far.
Oh, well, that's really, really kind of you. I think Wolf is the next, obviously coming out in December, and then there's another project called Munich: The Edge of War. That's a Netflix film that's coming out in January, which again was sort of uh, yeah, it's a very different film, but one I feel very passionately about as well. So, you know, I just feel thrilled to be working. You know, it's very lovely to have this any sort of opportunity or choice in work such as this.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And everybody, Wolf is fascinating. Give it a look-see. Have a great day.